are back at day 2 at the Rosenberg House doubles, and we're jumping straight in with a student sprint, and right after that, our first panel. So over to Aki.
So good morning. I just wanted to say this is very impromptu. At my school, I noticed something interesting. We had so many good ideas. Student initiatives, community projects, events. People wanted to help, but it all just felt a little fragmented, like as if they were just doing projects on their own world. There was no system to unite them. And to give you a little example, at one point we had 9 different app ideas, and we were planning to implement 9 different apps into the App Store. So that's why I built Rosenberg Social Hub. Rosenberg Social Hub is a private school-based digital platform that connects both students and the teachers to turn ideas into coordinated and practical systems. Whether that's community events, social impact projects, peer support, or student-led initiatives. I built the app as a solution to a lived problem that I saw during many Create AI sessions that we had. Create AI sessions in our school is where students come to propose their own initiatives to Mr. Breed. And to see how digital communities can strengthen communities and foster innovation. For me, RSH was a testbed for leadership, for technology, and for how we design platforms that actually bring people together for a shared purpose. Because at a planetary level, our ability to solve bigger challenges depends on how belong we feel to the problem itself. It is whether innovation helps us organize, trust, collaboration, and collective action, not just share and scale performance. Thank you.
Well, hello everyone. We're off to our next panel with the theme of generation and regeneration. The theme here is the empowerment of our generation and how can we give ourselves the agency to respond to the questions of sustainability, climate issues, and most of all, how to respond to them. And especially the part of response is very important at our hearts. We can see it through our projects such as the Humanics, which was an initiative which promoted tech literacy, Urban Refuge, as you can see there, and as well as Space Habitat. This gets me to my guiding question for this panel. How is the next generation redefining prosperity, purpose, and the planet's future? And I would like to invite Dr. Carol O'Donnell, Executive Director at Smithsonian Science Education Center. I would like to invite Stefan Ernie, Head of Quality and Sustainability at the Dolder Grant, Raphael Gilgan, Trend Scout Future of Work at Vitra AG, and Emma Jurczyński, Architectural Designer at MIT. Please, a round of applause.
Sophia, will you please join us? You can start. So I'm going to start with my first question to Carol. In your opinion, what is the most effective way to build regeneration literacy so that young people like myself can turn concern, like this real concern we have about the state of the world, into capability and then action?
Yeah, so thank you. There's a lot in that question, and I think each one of them deserve kind of a discussion. So the first is just this general idea of literacy. What is it? We hear it all the time. Climate literacy, scientific literacy, reading literacy. So what do we mean by literacy? So it actually just means a couple of things. First, that I know something. The second is that I can communicate what I know. And the third is that I can actually do something with that knowledge so that I can make decisions, hopefully that improve me and the society. So now we take this term regeneration literacy. Does anybody know, where did regeneration literacy, who came up with that terminology? Does anyone know? Do you know where it came from? Okay. So I don't know where it came from, but I'm only assuming this idea of regeneration has become a new way of thinking about sustainability. So when we think about sustainability, we're thinking about something that we can sustain. But if we believed right now that what we're doing at this current moment, let's imagine the access to fish has depleted because of fisheries and overfishing. And so if we're dissatisfied with the number of fish that are available to us, then we might say sustaining that current state isn't sufficient. So instead, people have focused on regeneration. How do we get back to something that used to be, and think about a flatworm that regenerates or regrows. So this idea of building students' literacy or regeneration literacy is helping them to be able to connect local community-based issues that are meaningful to them and using their knowledge to be able to understand it, communicate it to others, and then do something about it. And when they do something about it, hopefully they're bringing that to action, actions that make a difference in their community.
Thank you so much. That was amazing. My next question is for you, Stefan. In hospitality, what does regeneration look like beyond just efficiency? So what practices genuinely restore ecosystems, communities, or local value?
Well, there are many examples. I'm talking about the Old Grand I'm working for. It's a 5-star luxury hotel in Zurich. Some of you might know it already, but also for the Responsible Hotels of Switzerland, which is a association of hotels 3 to 5 stars committed to sustainability. So apart from, let's say, energy management, renewable energies, like in our case, the electricity is from 100% hydropower or geothermal systems, photovoltaic systems, building management systems, but also, for example, we have around our hotel 13 hectares of forests, so, and also extensive green areas with predominantly endemic plants. So this is also a large space for biodiversity and for regeneration. But of course, there are also, those were examples, like ecological examples, but there are also social aspects of sustainability. Like in our case, for example, we are part of the OK Go initiative, which is an initiative of Swiss Tourism Federation, which publishes accessibility information for disabled guests on the website and on a special app. Well, those are some examples, but of course there are many others.
Thank you so much. That was very interesting to listen to. Moving on to you, Raphael. How's the next generation redefining good work in a regenerative economy? What do they demand that older systems don't provide?
That's a tough question. I think first, the way how you've grown up, how you get educated and how you get a perspective to the planet, it's totally different, like my age or maybe the ages between us. And so we have a kind of awareness. And the other thing is what happens also in companies. Remember the Climate Week in New York, we host at Vitra more than 100 of the C-suite for sustainable business in the States, and I was quite surprised that there is a strong movement. So whatever and whoever has an opinion about that. And this accessibility, I think, allows you to make small steps and to make a change, and especially the access to this information, what happens around me, how to deal with that makes a difference. I want to add something. At Vitra we have 3 missions. We have a commercial for sure. We have a cultural mission, think about our design museum. And the third one, we have an ecological mission. I would love to have 13 hectares of forest and something. I have a little farm, but around the Vitra campus. But the Vitra campus, by the way, it's quite good. And we do also the same activities, biodiversity. Even in the restaurants, we change the way how we provide food. And that is the way, not how we convince, but how we seduce. And I believe your generation is a generation of seducing and getting access to that.
Wow, for sure. Agree with that. Thank you so much. Okay, and last but not least, Emma. In the built environment, what's one design principle that most improves regeneration? For example, in material circularity, and why?
Can you hear me? Okay. Thank you for that question. I'm so happy to be here. I come from a material reuse background with a slight obsession for existing materials. So I would say, for me, it's two. One is material source and the other is community. For me, I think what's more regenerative than reviving what we already have, it means we have to extract less from the earth and means fewer landscapes become landfills. But this couldn't happen without a community of people. We need people to deconstruct, to transport, to build with these. So I think fundamental to having a regenerative future is building this community where you can align on a vision and together implement and hopefully have some fun along the way.
The fun is the most important part there. Carol, I've got another question for you, if you don't mind. So how can leaders communicate these kind of issues of climate and sustainability science in ways that not only motivate generations, but also don't trigger this kind of fatigue or denial?
Excellent question. So first of all, I'm at the Smithsonian Institution in Washington, D.C. in the U.S. We would consider ourselves to be leaders in what our mission is increase knowledge through research and diffuse knowledge. And part of diffusing knowledge is educating people. So I lead what's called the Smithsonian Science Education Center. And this idea of how have we been, as leaders, communicating this idea of climate and sustainability science so that it's meaningful to the next generation and motivates the next generation is actually by not just talking about climate and sustainability, but by talking about the issues that matter to that generation in that particular region, in that demographic. So, for example, you talked about biodiversity around this massive area that's in your home or your region. You talked about regeneration in terms of materials that you extract from the ground. Other people might be concerned about food or agriculture or biotechnology ethics. Each of those matters. And so I would just say that as, kind of thinking about cohesively, each one of us brings to the table a different idea about climate or sustainability. And climate is related to each of these topics. And so I say, in order to, if you're a leader in this area and you want to advance climate science and sustainability, find the topics that matter to those individuals. And that's what we do through the Smithsonian Science for Global Goals.
Thank you so much. That's really insightful. And this kind of appealing to your audience, I think, is a very strong message.
Okay, moving on to some more questions. Raphael, for you again. What new skills or roles will matter the most as regeneration becomes a real operating principle?
I get always the tough questions. Wow. I would say first is providing a dashboard of information about the challenges, the opportunities, or seasons. In the area where I live, it's not from today to tomorrow. But if you're not connected to the planet or to your surrounding, your environment, it's difficult to change something. I think first is that. Second is to be aware about the toolkits you have, and the value of. So if you got the insights and you understand the impact and you know the actions, so what is the value of your actions? And the other thing is not to put that on a. How to say that? To put that in a window where everybody can see that, And I think, and that is kind of the center of gravity to do that.
I've got another question. This time I'm actually going to ask you. So can you talk to me a little bit of how this kind of concept of regeneration plays in with the work you did, especially with augmented reality when we were in New York for Climate Week?
Thank you so much. This is a very interesting question, and it's also really close to us because Urban Refuge was a very important project that we actually did present at Climate Week. A lot of you have been there to kind of see that happen. It's very useful through the perspective of augmented reality because we do not only have the physical blocks that are really sustainable and really easy to kind of reproduce and build with, but we also have digital resources that help us incorporate the augmented reality into the usage of that project. So we actually have a website where students can create 3D models of structures with those blocks and with different sorts of like plants and additional things they can add for the design perspective of it. And they can use augmented reality to see how those 3D models would look like through their lens camera, what they would look like in reality. And this really helps us to kind of collect data for research or planning much more efficiently and much faster, which is, I think, also really, really convenient for the purpose of that. Thank you.
I want to add something to that topic. At the MIT, there's a course. It's called How to Make Almost Anything. So it doesn't matter what you study. You get the opportunity. I think maybe you use a course, and it's so interesting because you learn everything. It's about woodworking, metallics, building a microchip, whatever. Think about your school has a workshop or like a training. It's called How to Regenerate Almost Anything. Yeah. So thinking about that. Any kind of material, any kind of surface, even artificial materials, that would be quite interesting to, to empower you to rethink every single item in your surrounding.
Yes, that's really, really interesting. I have one question for you, Stefan. So what would you say is the hardest trade-off that you face, whether it be in terms of cost, guest experience, or supply constraints? And how do you lead through it without falling prey to greenwashing?
Where shall I start? No, I mean, of course, there are many challenges. So one, for example, is that nowadays, or still luxury, especially in the luxury hospitality, luxury is understood as something like excessive and a lot of material. So this mindset, of course, needs to change, but then also sustainability often means like less quality, and but in our opinion, it's not less quality, but rather more origin and rooted to place. So in our case, especially at the Dolde Grand, as a 5-star superior hotel, sometimes we have constraints with the high standard of design, like the corporate identity, corporate design guidelines. Then also what we feel is that often the suppliers aren't there yet. So to find nice products or nice solutions which are like 5-star suitable or luxury suitable isn't always the case. Then another one is another big challenge, actually, especially as a small and medium enterprise that we are, is data management. Because also in sustainability, famous wording, you can't manage what you don't measure. So sometimes it's really hard to get like the right data amount, quality, and also data consistency. Another one is also the internal cultural change. So circular economy or regenerative hospitality, of course, means planning and separating, and also a big mindset internally. So, and also continuous training, and like in the everyday business. Sometimes we feel like we have like active or passive persistence, and you need to know how psychologically you may like break this persistence. Yeah, so supply chain transparency is sometimes also one big challenge or trade-off. and of course increasing compliance, which is not a trade-off but also a big challenge, especially as a small and medium enterprise. And last but not least, I think that's one of the biggest, apart from the internal cultural change, is the heterogeneity of our clients, especially in a 5-star hotel. So I think it's different when you go to a like organic eco hotel, because then you know what to expect. But especially at the 5-star hotels, I would say we have like 10 to 15% of our clients really do care about sustainability and responsible hospitality, but the big part, like 80%, they don't care. And so it's important to get them on board and to deliver like tangible examples of sustainability, or rather of responsible hospitality. I don't like the word sustainability too much. I prefer to use the word responsible hospitality because it's a responsibility.
Thank you so much. And one last question for you, Emma. If you could redesign one everyday space to make regeneration visible and normal, what would you change and what impact would it have?
Thanks. I really loved this question. So I think I wouldn't redesign a space, but I would redesign a system. Thanks. So the first thing that came to my mind is a stud wall. That sounds very boring, but it's very interesting. This is why. By redesigning a very simple stud wall, it's very normal wooden construction, like your typical wooden house. And by thinking of redesigning a system, this kind of way of things coming together can change form, it can change uses, and it can change contexts. So it's very adaptable to different kind of projects, locations, things like that. But this, so by redesigning a system, you have the opportunity to scale. So it can be something very small, but it can be something very large. So we start with a house. Your neighbor thinks it's cool. You design your neighbor's house. You design a village. You design a city. And then you can actually have some kind of global impact. Because I think, I believe kind of our role as designers, which many of us may identify, is to kind of visualize an alternative future. And by kind of demonstrating this alternative way to live, hopefully we can kind of bring other people on board to live in that way, because there's about 3 billion tons of waste, construction waste generated per year. And so in order to have an impact, we have to be working at scale.
Cosimo, how are we doing on time? Do we have time for audience questions? Yeah? Yeah, okay. So I'd like to open it up to anybody in the room if they have any questions for our amazing panelists. Okay. I'm on my way, I promise.
So I kind of have a question for both Raphael and Anna. You mentioned redesigning systems, and then you mentioned the class at MIT where you're using materials, it sounds like, to work on projects. And at Rosenberg, we have developed a metaverse where it's an augmented reality, where we want to kind of move research and education to this augmented space. However, I want to get your opinion on whether you think research can be moved to augmentation, and we can first test out materials in the metaverse before we actually use our materials on Earth, and if you think that's more sustainable, or if we're using more energy to run these systems on the augmented reality.
So first, I believe that we always use the latest data and technologies which are accessible for us for any kind of challenge. It doesn't matter how big or how small it is. And we have the opportunity, we have the privilege doing that. It's amazing. Second is, I'm a fan, by the way, from any kind of augmentation and virtual reality, but the thing with, to understand this world or this approach, we have to be in context with cosmos. Cosmos means the entire planet. the bigger idea. Look, I live on a farm, it's a privilege, but it was not chosen by me. It wasn't coincidence. Living in a farm, there's only one person you have to deal with, and that's not a deal, that is nature. Living in the nature means understanding, respecting, suffering sometimes. And I believe still there are limitations in augmentation that hopefully we can do that in a while. But yes, providing data, using computing power, especially for your idea about what you mentioned before, I would love that you build me a poster for my lectures in the future, like from a small idea, scaling it big. That is necessary doing that.
I would say yes. I think any sort of digital means to help facilitate is always worthwhile experimenting with. I think similar to the kind of conversation I was very inspired by yesterday's testing for failure. So how you can kind of rapidly test whether things work, if this is in the physical or the digital realm, and using all the tools available to you to kind of visualize, create, ideate, iterate upon your ideas is really valuable. However, similarly, when it comes to the real world, there's a whole nother challenges that arise. Personally, I work both between the physical and the digital, and whenever I get my hands on physical materials and start building, intuition often prevails. So I think both tools are necessary and not without each other.
I want to add something that comes to your mind. I don't know if you are familiar with Alexander von Humboldt, maybe one of the best scientists Germany ever had. And I love his idea, thinking about nature. And now with AI, when we talk about AI, we often think about automation. We never think about augmentation, to augment ourselves. So often when I have a task, I ask my GPT, hey, help me to understand that in an approach of Alexander von Humboldt. And so out of a sudden, I can augment myself. You are a generation growing up with augmentation in a way that gives you so an advantage. And you should consider that also. Even not to be an expert, with this kind of augmentation, whatever you want to do, you can do that immediately.
So first of all, I think this was an excellent question. So thank you for asking it.
100 points.
Yes. And I also want to say that, you know, these ideas are complicated. When we think about biodiversity or biodiversity loss or climate change or the use of sustainable materials, those are complicated. And so in order to be able to better understand it, which brings us back to this idea of literacy and regenerative literacy in particular, we need to be able to contextualize it to our own place. And you use this term of place-based. And so I would say that one of the benefits of what you're describing, this idea of augmented reality and what you described, allows you to do that. If you are doing something in the corner of that room, that incredible model that's in the back, but you can then place that in your own community to see what your own home might look like in the use of it, that's such a benefit to you. And so it's contextualize something to build meaning. And I think that's important because the purpose of this entire session is how is the next generation redefining purpose, prosperity, and the planet's future? And whatever we're doing in the area of sustainability, it's being driven by your questions and your needs, your community. And in order to do that well, we have to augment it. We have to augment it to contextualize it.
I have a question. So, how is the next generation driving this? The next generation is not one thing, it's many, given the global political, socioeconomic inequities. So I don't want us to think that, you know, we sit here in Davos, very privileged, and we're having this conversation around regeneration and so on and so forth. So the question to the panel is, to what extent, or merely situate the conversation that we are having for the benefit of everybody in the context of the global inequities that we face, and how do people around the world, not just us, talk about this conversation tangibly, the kinds of burdens we need to take on. Do they have to be distributed equally? Because we are one system. So how do you take on that challenge in the face of such inequities?
Just briefly. Yes. And then you can think. I would say, and because at the Smithsonian Institution and the Smithsonian Science Education Center, we work with youth across the world. And one of the things that we have is what's called the Network for Emergent Socio-Scientific Thinking. It's a complex word, but it just means bringing people together from around the world, from different demographics, different socioeconomic status, different generations, so that youth, teachers or educators, and scientists are all in the same room, across sectors, across generations, and across perspectives, so that we are making certain that we're learning from one another, so that there's balance in the way that we're responding. Because otherwise, if we're all alike in a room, we're not going to be able to solve these problems. So I think that's one way to do it.
Well, I'm maybe not the right person to answer that question as a hotelier, so but it's a really physiological question or topic. So, in my opinion, it's also very important to exchange ideas, and also within hospitality, for example, to exchange experiences so that we learn from each other. So yeah, but the big question whether we need to distribute all the benefits or the wealth in this world equally, I rather prefer not to answer, because maybe my personal answer as a private person is a little bit different than my the answer as a hotelier. But also as a hotelier, of course, we have some force or the opportunity to do good, and in our case, for example, we support many NGOs, charity organizations, and so on. So that's what we can do as a hotelier or as a hotel company.
Nothing to add.
Okay. Apologies if my answer is now a bit more distilled from this distance. I would say, the work that I do at the moment is hyperlocal. So I am very much kind of collecting the materials from the trash and building with that. And I go different places to kind of make interventions very site-specifically. However, as this from the work that I do, it's very kind of early development research stage. And personally, I kind of lean on the IKEA model. So for everything I build, I make a sheet that is demonstrating the system that I've designed and implement it. And then I share it kind of via social media, because that's currently the platform that I'm distributing information on. So your question is a valid one. And it's one that I think about often, especially because I am working with existing materials, and I'm hyper aware that certain social economic backgrounds have to do that out of necessity, and I'm coming at it from quite a privileged perspective. But I acknowledge that it's also a kind of, I believe, a necessary step for the future. And I'm based out of New York, so kind of involved in New York policy, and there's an appetite for it, and it's shifting. And I hope with the new mayor we might see some more regenerative buildings.
Thank you so much, everybody, for your answers and your insights, and thank you to our audience for your questions. It was a pleasure having you all. Thank you. If you have any questions for any of the panelists or wonderful Sophia here, please approach us afterwards. Thank you very much.
So please feel free, our guests, to mingle with our students, ask questions. You also identify them in the Rosenberg chat.